Am I allowed to touch this bloody thing?
How do you want it pointed at you?
I don't know. I just don't want it to be there. I think what we should do is just transition this whole ship of insanity over to the sofa.
But then we're sitting down and DJ told us not to sit down. I want us to sit
down. I don't want to stand up. I don't like the standing up.
Stand is good for the...
Oh, fuck that. We're not opera singers. We're not opera singers. We're stupid pretend podcast people.
Pretend. We're real podcast people.
Well, no, we're not. We're not making any money off this thing. This is like 6 hours of my week.
This is episode 9.
So, rate and review, you motherfuckers.
Hey, don't be rude.
Hey, I've started swearing early today. What? Do you want to make this non-explicit, do you?
Where did we meet our guest? This week's guest.
We can't remember.
We can't remember. We think it may have been Baby Summit related.
I think it might have been Baby Summit.
We think it may have been Baby Summit. And Lacey...
she feels like a person that's just always been there.
Correct. And I seem to remember she came on my radar because she asked you for rainbow ribbon. Was that right?
She did ask me for rainbow ribbon.
So what we do is Kate actually, all the ribbons that you order that are part of our product, silk ribbons, they're dyed, right?
Yeah, I dye them in the kitchen.
You dye them in the kitchen and we can't get the kids to do it because they're
lazy.
They're lazy. Shit. They're lazy. So Lacey's, I want a rainbow ribbon.
That's right. She contacted me and was like, look, all my clients, they all have rainbows. I'm hippy dippy. Give me rainbow ribbon. And don't give me any of this bloody fancy lady ribbon where it's all pastel colours. I want ball-tearingly rainbow ribbon. And I was like, this goes against the fibre of my neutral being.
Yeah, look at
my neutral colour palette being.
Very neutral today.
However, I agreed and I had so much fun making it.
Yeah.
It was... So we made like...
So is this something that people shouldn't be thinking about asking you about?
No, you can get... I will make custom ribbon colours.
How much millions of dollars do you charge?
I think it's like $100 for me.
No.
Yeah.
Don't.
It's basically to cover the dye because I don't really charge anything more.
So we're not...
For my time because it's fun!
We're making a not-for-profit here.
It's fun, yes, except we have to pay tax if we ever make a profit.
Oh, that's a good point.
So, yeah. So it's... She is this really... So, overshare time.
No.
Oh, shut up. I was raised by a bunch of dirty hippies and I went to a dirty hippie school. So, I have a little bit...
in case everyone was wondering.
You have the silver spoon boy. But I have a bit of a radar, like a bit of a... You know, everyone comes on.
A warning radar?
Maybe a warning. What's the John Roderick's line? Never go to a second location with a hippie.
Never go to a second location.
That's it. And so I have a little bit of that, a little bit of scar tissue related to hippies. And but she is such she's such a conundrum of crazy kind of contradictions because she is like full dirty hippie, which I love. Yep. And she is also redonkulously smart and savvy and knowledgeable.
Her business
and
stuff
thorough.
The business is good and she follows up and she's organised and yeah.
I love her.
Yeah.
I love her. And I love any woman that will walk up to me and go, here, take my baby. I'm sick of carrying him. And then I just carried her baby for like 4 hours at a trade show once. She just like dumped the baby on me and ran off and played. And I was like in heaven because it's her fifth child. Fifth, that's 5 children. Just 5 too many if you ask me. But it's her fifth child.
On. Kids are lovely.
And he was like so relaxed. He was like, yeah, whatever. Carry me, whoever you are. I don't give a shit. He was beautiful. And he was like a wombat. He was like 40 kilos.
He's a tall
baby.
wombat now.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh,
no, she got a great family and she has put it all together all along. She's managed to...
Yeah, she's strategic. She's like, I thought it was so smart in the stuff she was talking about, how she actually prices up.
Yeah.
And how the things like she'll have 2 shoots in there that are booked in as free shoots that she can give away to people who have had a loss or who just need it or whatever, and that's like priced in to her pricing structure. Yeah. She is so smart. She's so savvy. She is so estimated. Like, I think there's a real thing in the market. Yeah, I think there's a real thing in the industry that the birth photographers are all these nipple rubbing hippy dippy fruitcakes and
nipple rubbing.
Yeah, well, because it helps with getting things moving.
Okay,
down
right.
there.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. It's all right. Breathe. It's fine. And so I think there's a real bias against that in their entire side of the industry. They're put into documentary, and I don't know.
Well, we talked about where
why
the
don't they have
photography
their own
fits.
fucking category? I don't, whatever. But that I don't care about awards. But that I think the newborn photographers are kind of like, oh, you guys are great, but we've kind of got the fully cooked creature afterwards. We prefer that. And then the engagement and wedding photographers are like, you do what? And so there's this they're sort of stuck on a little island on their own, and they shouldn't be. And she shouldn't be. Like it was so good to hear at the end about that she's looking to transition her mentorships past birth photography, because she would be an incredible mentor, like to the point that I would actually very seriously consider hiring her for like contract, like just for her to give us advice about stuff, because I just think she is so smart on business.
She's a very clear thinker, and I think it before she moved into photography, she was running mobile phone stores and a few other things around the place.
I had no idea about any of that.
No, I didn't. That's why interviews are good fun, aren't they?
She's such a bloody champion, and
she's
one of the sweetest people, like one of the sweetest, loveliest people you'll ever meet, and swears like more than I do.
No, almost as much as you.
Oh, fucking very much. And no, she was just
No,
I love her.
it was good. And there's the things she's pushed us on a couple of things, and there's one product we haven't really sorted out. I absolutely love this product.
I love it too, but it's not perfect, and that's why it's not. We've really dragged our heels on it, because the product.
There's a good reason why it's not working. It's like it's not that we can quickly solve it. We need the camera companies to come to the party.
I need to.
So get this. Let me describe it to you. So
this is a fail. This is an Atkins fail.
Thanks.
Well, it is. It's my fail.
So do you remember
it's my fail. It's an Atkins marketing fail. It's not an Atkins Paul Atkins fail.
Well, it's a fail. I feel like it's a failure of programming, because what the idea is, and do you remember the days when we had a film camera where it used to put the date on every photo, and like
Most of our audience
we spent like 10 years.
What you're talking about.
Yeah, we spent 10 years trying to artwork dates off a photo.
Fuck, yes,
so,
we did.
so what the idea that we came up together with Lacey was a birth is a document of moving through time, whether the labour starts then or whatever it is. It's a move. So how cool would it be? And actually, I think we need to thank Simon Casson for this idea, because he thought this is an idea for weddings, where weddings too are a document of at 9:08 this happened and 9:09 this happened. So Lacey's thing is that if we had the timestamp on each picture, then it would be kind of a cool record, a handful of photos that would show this spread of action.
Yeah. And because especially with birth photography, it really is like, 4:42 and 1 second. No baby. 4:42 and 2 seconds. No baby. 4:42 and 3 seconds. That's a baby. It's like bang, and there's a baby.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
The problem with it is you go, oh yeah, digital cameras, yeah, they put the date and time on things. Yeah, they do, but there is so many problems with the metadata and the consistency of metadata fields from camera manufacturer to age to DNG conversions to Lightroom to Capture One.
And there has not been a Lightroom programmer that I have not harassed on the internet to try and get a solution for this, and they are all like, don't call me.
Yeah.
Don't email me again, crazy lady from Australia.
What we tend to do is the person who wants this product, we call it the Lacey, don't we? I think
it's Lacey package.
Lacey page. We say, okay, what we need to do is do some testing. And if you've got multiple cameras, you've got a problem. If you don't set your local time up, you've got a problem.
It's a whole thing to actually get set up.
So what we've got people doing is entering into the caption field in the or the title field, I can't remember, in Lightroom as the time they want to appear on the print.
And that's the thing. That's I think sorry, I'm off mic. That's my problem is that
This is your friend, by the way. You have to be friendly.
I don't like it, especially in the Rona. I'm like, somebody else is probably.
No one is spitting into it, just you.
So my thing is that in the in the when I launch a product, I'm like, I've tried really hard to think about all the possible problems with the product and possible complaints and blah, 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 to try and iron all that out before we launch so that I can go, do you know what? We've got this amazing thing, and it is just the coolest thing, and it goes A, B, C, D, and then it's done. Yeah. And this thing is like, well, you need to sit down, and you're going to get a complimentary 4-hour conversation with Paul, and you're going to, like, it's such a bloody nightmare. But once people get it sorted, they love it. Yeah. But it's not this beautiful, clean, simple. It's a clean, simple idea. The execution is flawed, and that's why it just kills me.
I don't know if you remember the conversation I had with Swainson the week before, John Swainson, where I said we had a panel of camera manufacturers. I said, why can't you sync the time on your camera with a local Wi-Fi time server? Yeah. And he didn't really have an answer. It wasn't his fault or anything, but I think the camera manufacturers are so far behind the phone manufacturers who just get this stuff right straight away.
I don't know I think the camera manufacturers are all just hanging out with dudes who take photos of mountains, and that's it.
Could be. Anyway, let's send our listeners and our viewers straight through to watching, listening to. And we'll see you.
Right there, that big microphone set there.
Sound fine.
I couldn't get it to work on my laptop, and you don't want to record a podcast in the living room with all my kids, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, let's start this, huh?
Cool. Am I allowed to swear?
You can swear. This is Kate's allowed on this thing, so it's all good.
Kate's on it. It's fine.
I know. She's the big tester if it all works. If it all works. So hey, I'm on the call with Lacey Barratt, all the way in Melbourne. Even though she sounds like she's got an accent that she's from somewhere else, we'll find out about where you're from and all that stuff. How's life in the lockdown in Melbourne?
Yeah. Life is as good as it gets, I think.
Good answer.
We basically this past week were all feeling slightly overwhelmed with homeschooling and lots of children and trying to run businesses from home and working and filling orders and stuff. So we basically just said, fuck the world, and sent our kids to their grandfather's house. Oh. And they came back like angels. I think they just needed to get out of the house, see different faces, and so they're amazing. Life is good now that they've been gone for a week.
Oh, it's crazy, isn't it? I think everybody has had that feeling, and I mean, you guys in Victoria are still facing some challenges because it's still bumping around, and Macca's we were just talking a second ago how Macca's has just far out, like 100 employees sent home and then 3 stores shut, and it just freaks you out, doesn't it? So you got a little bit more of a challenge. Whereas in Adelaide here, there's been no cases and no one's got it in the state, and we're like, okay, let's go again. And I don't feel good about it. I feel like it's going to bite us in the bum somehow. It's there. But look, you're a birth photographer, right?
I am.
Is there any of that happening right now?
Shooting births?
Yeah.
So we've actually just been taken down a stage of lockdown. So I don't know why, it's really crazy, but we're actually allowed to have people in our homes again. So up to 10 people or 5 people. Nonetheless, it's way more than what we could have before. But with that being said, people are attending home births.
Has that been going on before that?
So I read that there was a little bit of drama in a couple of groups where people assumed that you had to shut down, but no one actually said you had to shut down. And photographers have been kind of pissed off because they closed their businesses and then they didn't have to close their business. And it was kind of this moral dilemma, I think, that a lot of people were stuck in when it comes to, do I run my business or not? And so currently no one has been, or that I know of, has been shooting during the duration of isolation. However, since Victoria has been taken back down to, I think it's stage 2, people have been reopening their businesses. They're contacting their local health ministers and asking questions just to clear things up with legalities. and we are actually allowed to operate currently. So, I mean, I
Wow.
think as long as we're practicing that smart,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of a at your own risk kind of thing, but I am still staying home.
Look, I get that, and as you said, it's a moral dilemma, and I that's the thing that's been bothering me the most. Like, I would not class our lab as an essential service, and yet the Prime Minister said that if you can employ people and have people in the building and comply by the regulations, then you're essential. So, but I've still struggled with that because of all these people you might connect with, and I mean, births don't stop. They're powering on. It's probably going to be more than ever in 8, 9 months, 7, 8 months.
No, I was going to say 9 months time. I'm going to be packed to the brim with bookings.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. Anyway,
Yeah.
hey, let's wind back the clock. You came to Australia. Where are you from originally?
I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Oh wow, fabulous.
Yeah.
Now you came to Australia backpacking a while back.
I
Is that
did.
right?
I did 10 years ago in August.
Oh, cool. So we're getting up to
Yeah.
your 10-year anniversary, and is that where you decided to stay in Australia because it's such a lovely place, or
I stayed in Australia because I met a sexy Aussie man, and
What
5
else?
kids later,
So you met Crocodile
say no.
Dundee, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Or whatever the Australian version of it.
Yes, yes. I met Matt in a pub, and we got married like 2 months later.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, started having babies, and I'm just really lucky that I got the right guy the first.
That's a really tough one on both sides of the equation. It's really tough.
But I think that the statement rings true when you know, you know. I think that's a very true statement, and that was just one of those you just know.
Yeah, except when there are plenty of people out there, and I was speaking to my eldest, who's 17, and you say that, and it's so easy to say that in hindsight, but at the time you go, yeah, I know, but then 2 minutes later you go, well, he just look what he just did then.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's crazy stuff. And so, when did you pick up the camera? What's your camera story?
So I picked up the camera after I had my first baby. This is actually a really funny story. There's 2 versions of this story. So there's when I started shooting births, and then there's when I actually picked up a camera.
Oh, really? So we're talking about the same sort of time, is it, or?
They're within about a year of
Wow.
each other. About 6 months of each other. I don't think I've told the story of when I picked up a camera. I'll tell it.
Good. Good.
After I had Sam, he was 7 days old when he went and he had his newborn photos taken. I'm actually extremely embarrassed because
Was this in Melbourne or was this Melbourne?
No, this is in Darwin.
All right. Okay. So you're really Crocodile Dundee country. Yep.
Yes, this is in Darwin. And I took Sam in to go get his newborn photos, and it was $250 for the maternity and the newborn session. What I didn't know is that was just a sitting fee. So I was thinking, yep, cool, $250, let's do it. And then the photographer showed me all the photos and was like, oh, by the way, it's now this much, or this much, the package kind of thing, the in-person thing. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't prepare for this. Anyway, $2,000 later, I was like, fuck man, I could do this. She's making a fucking killing off of doing this. I could do this. And so I bought a Nikon D90X for $87 on eBay. And I shot with that for my first year in business.
Wow.
And from there, the more I photographed, the more I loved it. And then I just started shooting for other people. And then when Sam was 1, that's that kind of 12-month where I shifted. I was like shooting everything, as every new photographer does: birthdays, events, newborn. And after Sam turned 1, Facebook Time Hop popped up and reminded me that I only had 3 photos from his birth. And that was so detrimental to my memories, because I didn't I mean, you kind of reminisce and my baby's growing up. And yeah, that was me kind of stuck in this wormhole of I don't have any pictures. I don't remember anything.
Is that something
Gosh,
unique to birth, do you think? I mean, my mother always joked and said, you forget all that stuff for a good reason so that you go back again. Is that something, I mean, you've spoken to a lot of mums.
yes.
That's the thing, is it?
But yes, it is a thing, but not for the mainstream reasoning of to keep having kids. It's actually, so all of your hormones work together. So that way you kind of go into like this altered state. They call it labor land, where you're not really paying attention to anything around you. It's a very inward feeling. And it's so that way your logical brain is not making you think, and then your primal not primal brain, but your primal instincts take over, and it's what actually allows you to release and open and have a baby. So yes, it is a thing, but it's not so you keep coming back for more.
Yeah.
It helps.
Yeah, I'm sure it
But
does.
but it's literally so you can physiologically have
It's
a
a
baby.
focus. It's a focus thing, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
it's a shut. It's the same thing. I always think of when I got to all my kids. They've always got a pen in their hand. If they got their tongue out and they're drawing, like that's
Yep.
the symbol that they're doing that and nothing else, because they don't want to talk because their tongue's out. And they're going like, don't bother me. I'm into this thing. So you got that
Yes.
that shutdown. And so for naturally, you were disappointed that you were missing the photographs that were going to augment your memory of the process, huh?
Well, I mean, our brain naturally forgets bits and pieces because we are in that labor land state. And so this kind of goes into why birth photography is so important. And it's important because there's so many different layers and facets to having a baby as a woman and a birthing person, that this um, there's this unfolding of there's layers of autonomy, there's layers of trauma, there's layers of joy, emotional stability. Like there's so many different layers to having a baby. And so when we experience a really positive birth postpartum, when we go back and we look at those images, we actually get boost of oxytocin because we're feeling those feel good hormones by looking at those images again. And so that helps prolong a joyous birth. So when you have a traumatic experience, a lot of people say, oh, I don't want it photographed if it's traumatic. And when we lose our physical autonomy, the only thing that we have left is our emotional autonomy. And what's so powerful about going back and reliving that traumatic experience is that you now have the power to make an autonomous decision emotionally to decide, how do I want to feel about this?
Oh, wow.
And that in itself is extremely powerful. So I didn't have that. I didn't get that opportunity to be able to document that experience and then decide how I wanted to feel about it. So now I just have what I remember. And yes, I can decide how I want to feel about those memories, but to have the physical documentation with timestamps of where and when and how. Like, for a great example is we had Lennox in our lounge room here, and I thought he was born at like 9:30. He wasn't born until like 11:47.
Oh,
And I thought, Jesus, where did those few hours go? I don't
yeah.
even remember. Completely gone.
That's amazing. And tell me, when did you put all that information together about I mean, obviously at the time, you thought about it, but there's some stage in these last, what is it? You were 10 years ago, you were backpacking. So when was your baby born?
12 months later.
So so it took about this 9-year period, right, till now,
Yeah.
where you were August, where you were thinking about this. At what stage did you start connecting all this stuff together?
I'd say probably about 5 years ago.
Right.
I knew that there were multiple layers to birth, and I knew that there was a bigger reason for doing birth photography than a trend. but it took me attending 70, 80, 100 births before I finally started to see the trend
Yeah.
in my clients and the impact that it was having in their births,
Yep.
and serving them as a doula as well. And so over time, the more families that I served, the more I started connecting the dots of just how impactful having births documented is, and that it is so much more than a trend. It's so much more than, pretty photos on Pinterest or whatever, but it's actually altering the way people see and view themselves, especially while having a baby.
So can you just wind back a sec for the dopey bloke, doula? What's a doula?
A doula is somebody who emotionally supports a birthing person through labor, birth. And it doesn't even have to be labor and birth. There's death doulas, there's sibling doulas, there's all kinds of,
Yeah.
there's literally a doula for anything.
Yeah, so it's an intelligent emotional support vehicle, not a Labrador, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
Yeah, so one of the things that immediately, Kate and I found with you is you're thinking at a level that most of us don't think at with what you choose to, put in your way. And, you're a kind of a leader in this area because you've thought about this stuff and you've put it together and you can then echo it back to people. And in many ways you go, oh shit, that's right. That makes sense. I see what she's talking about. I've had that experience, or I've kind of known that, but no one's put it in words for me. So at some stage in these sort of 5 years since you put it together, you started being involved with associations and advising and helping other photographers along the path. And you'd obviously shot I suppose a couple hundred births before all of that started happening. How does that work for you now? So you can add on to it birth photographer, mother, doula, and what would you call yourself? Are you an educator, or are you a trainer, or a guide, or a...
I guess a mentor, because the people who I work with tend to be over a long period of time. I don't like to do one-offs. I would much rather work with you over the course of 12 months and get a true, accurate result rather than just hyping someone up and then pushing them out into the world. Running a sustainable business cannot be run on hype and hustle alone.
Yeah. And is it something you really wanted 9 years ago when you started, messing around with photography? Is that something you felt you were missing in your world?
What do you mean?
The
like
guide,
mentoring?
a mentor, yeah. Someone to help you out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I had a lot of photographer friends. Actually, the photographer who I started doing photography, because my newborn photographer, actually became a really good friend of mine.
Oh,
We're
wow.
we're still good friends. And anytime I had a question, she was more than happy to help and answer and show me Photoshop and editing and, how to run a business. So that was so instrumental to giving me the guidance to kind of keep going. Like, it was just enough information to keep me going back to my business for a little bit more. But I think at some stage you reach a point where you're like, I just don't fucking know what to do from here. I don't know where to go from here. And then you get really discouraged, and then you think you're a failure. And before you know it, you're down on this rabbit hole and you're like, fuck the world. I'm not doing this.
Yeah. It's so easy to get to, isn't it?
It is. And that is where I come in. To kind of hold you back from the edge of the cliff and say, okay, let's take a step back. Let's break this apart. Is what you're feeling actually what you're feeling? Or
Yeah.
is this, the result of a byproduct of something completely different? So while it is business, I don't want to say it's like life coaching, but our personal lives are an
Yeah.
absolute reflection of our business lives.
They generally are. I think for particularly sole traders, it's just what it is. And wanting to be something else is a nice idea, but it's really hard to take yourself the next step and go, I'm now corporate Lacey, Mind you, I got to say, business-wise, you seem really to have your head screwed on super duper well. And I think a lot of the people who have had mentoring from you, the business side of things is something you're strong on. Now, I've always thought, and I don't understand how the numbers work with birth photography, but you said you paid $250 and then there was the cost of prints afterwards. When you first, this is 10 years ago, of course, things change. But there's a lot of time and there's a lot of, oh my God, the baby's coming, sort of looking at the clock and nicking off in a car at all sorts of hours. How in the hell can that work as a business? I mean, you'd be lucky to do one a day. I just can't see how it adds up. Can you talk a bit about that?
Oh, you mean financial viability?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to make this a light fun thing, but it's a real thing you want to do, and you're not doing it for fun. You're feeding your kids as well, and everybody who listens to this is either just a lover of photography or they're trying to run a business, and they're always scratching their heads with the photography. How can I feed my kids, or how can I just go ahead with a business? I mean, surely a business involves employing people and growing and that. Whereas you just can't do that kind of stuff with what you're doing. So how does that add up?
So working out your cost of doing business is essential. And part of the problem is that people think that running a business is their CRM, their Lightroom, their petrol to and from the location, and their accounting software. And like, that's essentially their cost. And so they go, oh, that's not that expensive. But what they're not taking into account is their internet bill and the food while they're gone and parking at a hospital and the products and the shipping and how much time is it going to take you. Like, I actually incorporate I know that I cannot operate as the best version of myself without making sure that my whole well-being is taken care of. So I incorporate my naturopath into my cost of doing business, because when I physically feel like shit and I am run down and I am exhausted from going from birth to birth to birth, I am useless. And so that is a part of my cost of doing business. I incorporate that into my pricing. I also incorporate free birth sessions. So if someone unexpectedly loses a baby and they need immediate services, I take 2 sessions, I divide it between 25 clients a year, and I add that into my cost of my packages. So my clients are actually paying for someone else's birth photography for me to use at my discretion. So when you start adding all of that up, we very quickly realize that we are grossly undercharging. So what I love about this is that there is the front end of the deal, which is what everybody sees. And then there is the back end of the deal, which is only seen between you and your customer, your client. And so I'm a very firm believer in pricing yourself where you need to be financially for your own personal life. So if you're single, have no children, and live with your parents because you're saving to buy a house, then by all means do birth photography or any kind of photography for $500. Like, there is, charge your worth is circulating, and this might be a bit controversial. Am I allowed to be controversial?
Hey, I'm listening. Go for it.
But charge your worth is a really big thing here. And we all hear the same thing. Photography is meant to freeze your moments for a lifetime and cherish to look back on. And I think that if photographers really, really believe that that is true, that it doesn't matter if you're charging $500 or you're charging $5,000, because now that service is truly available to every budget. Whereas if we're trying to talk everybody up in pricing, come up, then we've just priced ourselves out of so many people's budgets that they can't afford you. And now it's not accessible to everybody. So when it comes to birth specifically and creating a sustainable business, it's making sure that your cost of doing business is accurate and that you're charging what you need to be to sustain the lifestyle that you need to sustain. And so for me, that price is going to be very different because I'm supporting 5 children as a sole provider, and someone else, their partner might be working or whatever, their circumstances are different. So their pricing is going to be different than what mine is. So yeah, I don't know if I just talked
No,
circles,
you
but
did
I
fine. You did fine.
answered your question.
And you're like, your husband's a kept man, is he? So he doesn't have to do anything but look after the kids?
Well, I mean, he cooks and cleans and does the
That's
dishes
awesome.
and, brings me coffees every couple of hours.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well done.
He's amazing. Yeah.
It's such a cool place to be in where you've got that stuff sorted, and also to be able to handle a lockdown and, and not be trying to sell your youngest off or the one you don't like, that's
Yeah. Selling on the black market.
yeah. I've always heard eBay's the best because there's no noise. There's no sound on eBay. So you can pop your kids on eBay if you need to.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. So you're a documentary photographer. I expect if you wanted to pull back from the whole thing and say, what are you doing? You're telling a pretty big story. Certainly big for the participants, aren't you? It doesn't get any bigger than that.
Yeah.
In most people's lives.
Yeah.
I was going to say, how do you find yourself with your imagery in competitions and amongst other imagery? Do you find the judges cope with it and that?
Is this a real question, Paul? Am I allowed to answer this?
Well, you can, because I can tell you my side of that story.
Okay.
And when you've done your side, I'll tell you my side.
Yeah. So I can see this from both ends of the spectrum because, like you, I've been on both sides as well. But I think that part of entering competitions is, and a lot of people are going to really disagree with this, but if you're going to be entering a competition, you have to know who the judges are. You have to know what they shoot. You have to know, what it is that that they like, basically, and then provide it to them.
No, that's a reasonable bit of logic. I don't think anyone would deny the reality that often ends up being the case. No matter how hard you try as a judge, it often creeps back into it to some degree, right?
It does. And for me, I refuse to conform.
Really?
Oh gosh, who'd have thought? I refuse to conform to that thought process. And so I find that my work either does really, really, really well or it epically fucking fails. Like, there is no in between for me. I don't do okay. I either do really well or really crappy. And I think the reasoning for that is because it is so challenging, the images that I decide to enter, and so confronting that it's a split audience every single time. And so, sorry.
Notifications? You know what?
Yeah.
I didn't say that in the beginning. I keep forgetting to tell everybody, hey, just make sure your notifications are off.
And then I was like, do I say something? I don't know if he heard that.
No, I'm not going to cut this out either, because this is real life, and you and me, we're alive and real.
But yeah, so I split my audience very well, and I find that it can be very frustrating because there's often wedding photographers and documentary photographers and newborn photographers and all these different kinds of people that sometimes I feel like they don't get it because they're not in that situation. Like, I've had people judge my images and go, oh, I wish that she would have taken 3 steps to the right. And I'm like, really? I was up against the wall, but you wouldn't know that because all you see is this, not this. But there's those kinds of aspects to it that slightly frustrate me. But then there are also the aspects of competitions will literally not allow birth and motherhood photographers to enter their work into their competitions just because it's so controversial. It's not even controversial. I don't know why.
No, it's imagery we're not used to seeing. That's all it is. And so, it's jarring to the average person who hasn't seen it. They're like, oh my God. And it's like anything in life, the more you see of something, the more you experience with something, the more you understand it and the more you accept it. And this is why, I think talking about Australia is a very small place. And so the amount of judges that are able to look at birth photography independently and judge it, because they say in a court of law, we're not talking about law here, but in a court of law, we're judged by a jury of our peers. So let's just water that down to judging photography, you want to be judged by people who understand the kind of work that's being done. And getting a panel together that has that experience is really hard. And saying that a judge who judges landscape or something is also great at doing birth is like, it might be the case, but I think it would be not as many judges as everyone would hope. And the money you need to put into judges training and do judges training properly to expose people to all the kinds of work, and they would need to, a landscape photographer would need to sit down and look at a lot of birth images, talk to birth photographers and say, what's the story? How does this work? Why is that the case? And in a panel situation, you're seeing a lot of work, and you see something come up, and you're in the documentary category, so expecting everything and anything. And you see, you'd love to see some, I mean, I don't know why I'm saying this, but you'd love to see some war zone images, because in our world as documentary photographers, and I'm not pretending to be one, but in the world of documentary photography, that's the stuff we go, our heroes, Cartier-Bresson and Robert Capa. You look at this stuff and you go, wow. And so you're kind of expecting to see something, and then you're seeing birth images as a part of that. And it's not, and a lot of judges are quite conservative. I struggle against my conservativeness. I fight that, and I think that's a healthy thing to be, and a healthy kind of person to role to take. So, I get it. It's hard. And so as a birth, that's why, because you're going to get someone on the panel who gets it, and who's vocal enough to lead everyone else in through a challenge to get it. So my side of that story is I was one of those people, because I spent a lot of time with people like yourself and Victoria Berwick, Mary, and Vic's, one of Vic's images here in South Australia. It made it the front page of the London Times because of, its controversialness. And it was a beautifully simple image, and she'd got a simple image amongst all the cords and cables that is a birth, and amongst all the people's hands and all the mess that is the mess of a birth. She'd got a nice, simple, clean, gorgeous image of a baby supermaning out of a vagina. It was, it's a beautiful picture. And I'm just thinking about it. That probably wasn't the image that I was thinking about the rest of the panel about. But when I'd sat on a panel and we'd seen it, it was the ability to go, oh my God, this is important because, and there's not, I get it. It's just a challenge. I don't mean to make myself look like I understand this at all, but it is. And it's one of the reasons why I struggle with awards in general now. And I also struggle with people like yourself, and I feel a lot of empathy for people like yourself who've been making great images, but they just may not be groundbreaking anymore. You broke a lot of ground, 5 years ago. Victoria broke a lot of ground 5 years ago. That ground is broken. The judging system is a thirst for new. Show me new, show me new. Where is it? Where is it? It's a crazed thing for something new and tasty, and there's only so much you can keep doing that before you become someone who you're not. And you must start trying to make images that you don't want to make. You're trying to make them to keep ahead of the judges, maybe not to please the judges, so to speak, but to keep ahead of them. And that's tough. That's impossible to run a business and feed yourself and your kids and all that.
I'm actually really glad you mentioned this, because as the birth photography niche in general, I've been saying this for about 12 months now, and that is that we've seen all the things that we're going to see as far as birth is concerned. Like, we know that babies come out of stomachs, or they come out of vaginas. We know that, what it's actually a very monotonous experience when you think about it. Your body opens and releases a baby, and then there is a checklist of images that you are to get: labor, connection, emotion, first look, crowning, first feed, partner's first cuddle, et cetera, et cetera. And I just traveled around America doing a mock birth tour, and one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about was birth photography has kind of reached the edge. It's pushed its outermost limits of as far as it's going to go, until we reinvent it and push it even further. And so I've been encouraging everybody, show me something new. What have I not seen before? And this is part of the problem with competitions, is that when an image comes across my screen, I'm like, yeah, that's a great image, but I've seen this before. Yes, it's another baby coming out of a vagina. Show me something different. And so it's up to us as photographers to define what is coming next. And I find so often than not, people just kind of sit back and go, okay, what's next? And this is we're leaders and trailblazing and groundbreaking and, like, who is it that's going to step up next and say, I've got it? And even if it's a shitty idea, it doesn't matter because you've just stepped up and said, this is it.
Mm.
And guess what? You have just claimed your position. Like, you've just put yourself in a position of authority, and people are just going to do it.
Yeah. Like, but winding back it, there may not actually be a new image. There might be a new image to every single mum who's having a baby. Like, I totally 100% get that. And the same goes for weddings. There is a new client who's in love with what you do every single day. Kristen Cook spoke about that in her podcast, and she was just so eloquent about the idea, and that's okay. The trouble with judging is, how do we reward those people for getting to that middle ground beautifully, where they're making nice images that the parents are going to love? How do we keep the judges interested enough and have a award? I mean, there is a silver award or whichever award system you've got that can cope with that middle ground, but how do you keep judges enthused and excited, rewarding those great images that are just images that we've seen? Because at the other end, or at the far end, the edge you're talking about, where we're trying to make things that, way out there, I don't know. I think it does, at some stage, it just has to stop because it becomes unreal. I mean, look at newborn photography. We got through that stage where hanging babies from trees, or, visually, in these little pods, these seed pods, we were photoshopping them up. But then there were some photographers who hadn't been along and listened to the thing that it's actually done in Photoshop, and were hanging babies in pods from trees to get the photographs and creating a dangerous situation. That's, we have to, like, this is difficult stuff.
So I think the answer to your question is understanding how to tell a story. And a lot of people are going for shock factor because they don't know how to tell a story. And so if you are a photographer and understand the basics of connection, emotion, and vulnerability, and can pair those three things together with a story, you've got a winner every single fucking time. It doesn't matter how simple or basic it is. If your highlights aren't blown, your blacks aren't clipped, and you've got nice tonal range and colors, you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, that's so right. Hey, tell me, how often are you in like clinical situations with your birth photography versus home births and that kind of stuff?
I'd say it's about 50-50.
Okay.
40, 60, 50, something like that.
And and it just flips around, whether it be hospitals or, so sometimes they're 60 and sometimes home birth. Okay. And so tell me, what about the support of the people in the suites as well, in the birthing suites as well, whether it be at home or, everyone's on board and being helpful and, and supportive. So we've really broken those grounds, have we? And
yeah, I think so. I've seen now where it's when you find out you're pregnant, you get your antenatal care, you get your doula, you get your birth photographer, and you're set.
Oh, that's so cool.
It is.
That's really cool. I mean, that's what we want. We want people to go, this is an okay thing, and this is what we do now. And it's, I mean, it's funny. I've not seen anything like this, but this is the thing that I've been through, and I've seen the development of an idea, and it's now a thing that people do, and it's a really cool thing. And I know I've seen a mutual friend, Helen Roberts, and her funeral work, and her desire. She's a death doula, and her desire to bring that sort of thing into the funeral. I think it's happening as well. I don't know if it's happening because it's so much easier to trumpet birth photography. It's such a beautiful, big, wonderful thing. Death is this thing we're still all wrestling with, isn't it? It's something we're not quite comfortable with yet.
But it's so funny because it's a parallel. Birth is life, is death. And so, I find myself in positions all the time where you go to a birth and it is still a birth, but the baby was not born thriving. And so, as birth photographers, we often, I think, can. It's a bit naive to think that every time I walk into a birth suite that it's going to be a happy ending,
Oh yeah.
and it's not if but when that happens. And so there's the direct parallel between life and death right there, and the normalization of that. And that is something that I've also worked really hard to normalize in the birth space, is death as well. And um, normal, natural death in a non-clinical way. So the same way that we want our autonomy respected in birth is also the same way that we want our autonomy respected in death as well. But that's such an awkward question to ask that nobody asks it. And so we are stuck with this mainstream idea of what death and funerals and, all of that looks like. So it's a really interesting parallel between the two, and how the same rights the same human rights that we are fighting in birth are is also the same human rights that we're fighting for in death as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I read on your blog, you're talking about egalitarianism, and this is all fitting amongst under that umbrella, isn't it? You were saying, like, just to paraphrase and correct me, please, that feminism is too narrow and too simple. You don't want to be described as a feminist. You want to be an egalitarianismist. Is that the right function of it?
Yeah. So it's called egalitarianism. That's quite an old blog.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I know it's fresh.
Yeah. No, but it is something that that I still stand firm by, because it's like, and this is another very controversial topic, but it's the same way that there are, in gender roles, there are places where women have little to no rights, and then for men there are roles where there are times where they also have little to no rights. For example, in separations and divorces, and child custody battles, and if they want the baby versus the woman wants the baby. Like, it's a whole spectrum of can opening worms that I won't get.
No, you got it. You got it. It's wormy, and I don't want to. Yeah, keep going.
But that part of me was just acknowledging that there is, if I want to be truly equal in feminism, then I also have to recognize that there is equality on the other side of that spectrum as well.
I can't imagine anyone denying that as an idea and a thought process. And if you think you lay along the ideas of your right to have a baby the way you want to have a baby, and the right to die the way you want to die, they're all beautiful ideas, and they all fit together, quite nicely. And I think we're getting there. Like, we really are actually getting there. And I'm surprised that the role photography, well, I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm just amazed at the way photography's done it, because it is the language that everyone understands. It's the language that doesn't need a translator. And you can look at a picture and you get a feeling for what's going on. And so maybe I shouldn't be surprised that photography is at the center of all of this. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do next? Like, you're going to wake up out of this cocoon of a lockdown, and you're going to get back to shooting births, or have you got something bigger you want to knock off in the next few years?
Oh man,
Sorry, hard question.
No, it's not a hard question. I plan on doing all of it. I just launched a online plant business selling plants online.
What? Hang on.
Yes. Like you said in the beginning, business is something really important to me. It's all I've ever known. I ran 5 AT&T stores in America when I was like, I don't know, I think I was 19 years old. I was the regional manager. I've owned a daycare center. Like, I've really, really strongly rooted in business. And so,
where did that start from, by the way? How did that all come about?
So I went to college for small business and entrepreneurship.
Yep.
And in my third year of university, I had an opportunity that was presented to me to buy daycare. And my family kept telling me, get your degree, get your degree. And I was like, that sounds really boring. I'd rather do the thing than dream about doing the thing. So I dropped out of university and I bought the daycare.
Wow.
And yeah, I never finished my degree.
Well, that's what John
But
Swainson told me last episode. He said he was one of the elite that never finished there.
yes, yes. So, yeah, I just started a daycare, and from there, I just never stopped eating, breathing business.
Wow. And so your parents, what, like, did they have to run their own business, or what was their thing? Like, what did they give you any inspiration behind that?
Well, my mom just constantly told me, baby, you can do whatever you want to do.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
Yeah. And it's not until you're older that you go, gosh, mom, thanks. Because then you start seeing all the opposition and you're like, God, if nobody had told me that all day, every day, then I certainly would not be where I am here. I would conform to the inner voices of what is in my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and then from there, after I had the daycare, I flipped that and sold it 2 years later for 4 times what I paid for it.
That's what you want.
Yeah. And then
You're like 15 at the time or something? Because what are you now? Like 25?
I'm 32.
Okay, righto.
Yeah, 32. 33, I don't know, something like that.
Far out.
And yeah, and then shortly after that, I moved to Australia and then worked in the pubs as a backpacker. And after we had Sam, our first baby, I continued working in corporate. I was working for Telstra. And after our second baby was born, I told Matt that I didn't want to go back to work and that I just wanted to run my business. And I had been asking him to quit for years and years and years.
What
and
was
it
he
wasn't,
doing?
He was driving trucks. He was a truck driver.
So he was away a bit, huh?
Yeah. During the day, he didn't do long distance. It was just local deliveries, but still it was really hard because you never know when he was going to be home, and it might be this time, and the truck wasn't clean, or this happened, or someone was late. So that was just taking a huge, massive toll on my mental health, because that's all I've ever done is worked, and I really enjoyed working. And so once the honeymoon of being a stay-at-home mom was over, I was like, okay, I'm done. Where's my business? Give me my business back. And yeah, so I quit Telstra after our second baby was born, William, and started working full-time as a photographer. And then, it's grown into this. So after our fifth baby was born, I love that all my milestones in my business were when my kids were born.
Well, they're big humps in the road, aren't they? They're like, no, you can't do business today because you're giving birth. It's like, there are big momentous occasions. So, fair enough.
Yeah. And so, after Lennox was born, our fifth baby 3 years ago, Matt quit his job, and I started paying all the bills. So I had to make it work. At that stage, it was like, okay, I can't I can't dilly-dally around and just like expect for business to fall on my lap. I have to actively create this life that I want.
That's huge. I mean, it's a big thing, and you're off. You've stepped off the edge of that cliff by yourself, and you're flapping and like crazy trying to keep it up. And I mean, when I joined the business myself, it was my mum and dad were running it, so I always had that there's someone else around. And it's only been the last few years when they have been around and they've retired that it's just freaky doing this. And I don't think I'm actually made for it. I think you're made for it, though. I think you just seem to have that that stare off in the distance. You know where you're going, and you're going to get there. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Well, look, hey, I've taken up enough of your time. Is there anything else you want to mention? What's the best way to people get in contact with you? Is it through your website?
Yeah. So if you want to if you're in Melbourne and you are having a baby and you want to hire me to photograph your birth, you can go to laceybarratt.com.au. If you're a photographer and looking for help with your business, you can go to birthphotographer.com.au. However, you don't have to be a birth photographer for me to help you. We're in the process of kind of shifting some branding around.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's a really great place to start is there. So.
And what about social media? Where do you hang out? Your Instagram?
Yeah, I am an Instagrammer, massive Instagrammer. That is at Lacey Barratt Photography.
Cool. We'll stick all those links in the old show notes. Well, thank you so much. You're such a beautiful chaos. It's fabulous. And
Thank you.
I just can't wait to hear what's next and as it happens and watch it happen. And because I think in many ways you and a group of you of like-minded souls have really changed photography in the world. And I just can't believe it's been there while it's been on my watch, and I'm like going, hang on, what just happened? And I'm so pleased. It's for the better by a long mile.
Yes, thank you so much. I think having Facebook change their terms and conditions of what nudity was a massive shift in nature when it comes to birth and normalization of birth.
Yeah, you guys have been fighting that, and you know your old country, the US, is just so far behind, and my guide at the moment seems to be getting further and further backwards. It's like they're in reverse gear or something, isn't it?
That's a podcast for another day.
I know, totally. You can do that one with Kate. She's very angry all the time about it.
Yep. Well, Trump's totally her bag of tea. We can chat about that all day.
Absolutely. Thanks, mate. Catch up with you soon. Welcome back, viewers, listeners.
Viewers and listeners.
Including them all.
Mainly listeners.
How about podcast participants?
Oh, God, that sounds like something you do as a warm-up, like red leather, yellow leather,
Red leather.
yellow.
Unique New York. Yeah.
That's for Anchorman fans.
That's Anchorman. Will Ferrell, Anchorman.
Yes, he is the god.
So we've had a great
Lacey.
week too. Well, it was Lacey, absolutely. But I
She's
just wanted
amazing.
to echo and thank you for the excellent work and the team out the back on getting that Rose launch done for the albums. And man, did it break. Like it broke on Monday so big. And
Why
Paul,
are you bringing this up?
I know, but it's cool because it's out now and it's
not
good.
cool.
It's really good.
It just keeps having little niggly bloody issues. I swear to God.
Okay, so
It's like Windows. I'm a Mac person. I wanted to plug it in and I wanted to fucking work and I don't want to think about it.
yeah, but this software has to.
Why is your phone ringing?
It's not now. So the what needs to happen is they write software like Rose is written by a great little company in America, and the software has to work on Mac and Windows, has to work on Android and iOS.
I know. And I had a whole defending rant when somebody was like putting the harpoons into poor old pick time. And I was like, y'all need to just settle your farms down because these poor bastards have to work with 17 kinds of labs and 32 types of products each and 57 kinds of computers and different languages and all this crap. And they're lucky they get anything right.
Yeah, and then on top of that layer...
But the difference is the pick time is beautiful and Rose is not.
On top of that layer, you've got the fact that then there's us who is programming our products into it by ourselves with all of our programming geniusness.
Oh, well, whatever.
So anyway, the end result is really good.
It's working.
It's very functional.
Yes, no more 2-for-1s.
No more 2-for-1s. Yes.
Bloody hell. And no, it's fine. But we released a product.
Oh,
we released
a product.
A couple of products.
Is this the advertising sequence?
This is
segment.
This is approved, and I approve this message. I'm Kate Atkins, and I approve this. No, we released a thing that we released two things. One called a link print, and one called a book plate, and they're both fundamentally the same thing, except one's in a...
One gets stuck into the album.
That's right. And basically what they do is you have all the detail. What do you call it?
A metadata.
Thank you.
But old school metadata.
Yeah.
Written
like
down.
Where was it? Who was it? When was it? What was it? Right?
Ooh, very good.
See, I did that. It's like
Yeah.
I've been listening to you for 25 years or something.
Why would you do that?
And my favourite thing, which is the QR code, which does what?
QR code links the image to whatever they want to link it to.
Yeah,
a website,
so it's a graphic,
gallery.
it's a little square with all this crazy shit in it. And
There's
you
one on the
hobby
front
it.
of our building.
There is, because I love QR codes so much. And you just put your phone camera over it, and it goes bling and bounces off to the thing. So instead of this idiotic system where photographers are like, here, I sent you the link to your most important day's worth of photos in the email, like fully don't lose it.
Don't lose
And
the
then
email.
I'm just listening, like 5 years down the track where I can't find an email from 6 months ago, let alone 5 years ago. Yeah. And the fucking clients have lost the files, which they will, guarantee. They will lose them. They'll put them on a work computer. They'll get fired. They'll lose their work computer. No more images. And then you have to, as the photographer, fish those little babies back out of your archival swamp.
So you're basically,
relaunch
the two
them.
products are a physical print. One gets mounted into the front of an album as a book plate, traditional
Yes.
book plate type of thing.
And it's
the other
beautiful.
one,
It has torn edges if you want, and it has a picture, and you can have your website
and the
address.
picture is the
your
picture from the
name.
wedding.
Yes.
So it's very personalised. You can set the URL up. You send the URL as part of the order, and that's what gets converted into a QR code.
Yep.
And then that's what comes back on it. So the people will forever have a link to where it is. Now that involves you, the photographer, making sure that link actually goes somewhere.
Well, that's a separate issue.
That is a separate, but it is worth thinking, and we're actually working out a way that we can sort of help people with that problem. But if it goes to a URL that you can then direct to another URL, so URL you own, it could be a part of your own website. Like for us, if it was atkins.com.au/a client's name.
Yeah, then
we
you
could
could
have a
host that
link-
anywhere.
We can have a link to a gallery. We can have a link to
Or you could
gallery on my
relink
website.
it to bounce to
You
another
go to
link.
Sheetproof,
Yeah, so there's tons of
Instaproofs.
options of dealing with it.
There is tons of
Just got to get
options.
something in there that works.
But you have to think about it, because it means that your link print
Made me
is going to
think about it.
the link print is invalid if the link goes nowhere.
Yes.
Gotcha,
Okay.
right?
Sure.
Anyway, so
Either way, it's really cool and very easy. And to get the QR code in there, all you do is copy and paste the link, and we make the QR code
we
for
do.
you.
We are QR coders.
And I just love them so much, and I think there's so many opportunities to do cool stuff. And Ollie Sansom's got some little tricky thing up his Ollie Sansom nose.
Let's quit.
No, there's some what are we quoting about this? Bloody hell!
So, do you ready for your moment
yeah,
of
what's
colour?
the colour this week?
Hey, you need to sound like you're a little bit interested in colour. This was a bit
I'm
we're going to
fascinated
do.
in colour.
Are you?
But what are you going to do when you've run through this bloody book so quickly? I thought we were going to be doing like one page at a time. We had 400 pages.
I'm not reading the stories
thousands
as
of
we go.
friggin-
We'll work out what we do
What
at the
colour
end.
have you got now? What have we got left? We've got like 4 colours left.
Green.
Oh, green.
And you know what does Kermit the
I
Frog
wear
say?
so much green.
What does Kermit the Frog say?
It's not easy being green. Whatever.
Okay.
Dead joke.
Okay. So let's first relate green to alcohol.
Come on. I can have my little nap now.
No, you can't. Get up. You've got to listen. You got to listen.
Can I sit down when you do this?
No,
at
you
least? I'm
can't
sitting
sit-
down now. I want to have all
I'm
of
so
this shit on the
disappointed.
sofas.
Hey,
I want the
listeners, if you're
sofas.
listening and you like this segment, write in
I want the
and tell Kate she needs to be nice.
Yeah, well, if they're going to do that, they have to write in and say they want more Frankie, because frankly, only 2 people said they fucking wanted him.
Stop swearing.
I will not.
One of the most popular things in the 1860s, right, was a drink in Paris, because you love Paris, called absinthe.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And absinthe with green, and had lots of different names of it, but the Green Fairy and all that kind of stuff. And people like Gauguin and Oscar Wilde and Allan Poe were drinking it like it's going out of fashion. And the latter half of that 19th century, whole districts in Paris were said to smell faintly herbal between 5 and 6 p.m. So this must have been the old bong of the day, people drinking absinthe rather than smoking
Jesus
dope.
Christmas.
But and so it actually had a really terrible reputation. It was compared to opium. They said it was the emerald tinted poison that sort of mirrored the onset of opium that people were drinking all the time. And scientists at the time, here to prove the danger of absinthe, 2 scientists doused an unfortunate guinea pig with wormwood fumes.
Oh, for God's
The
sake,
wormwood had
leave the
become-
guinea pigs alone.
The wormwood had quickly become the chief suspect in all of absinthe's botanicals, where the guinea pig became heavy and dull, and at last fell on his side, agitating his limbs, foaming at the mouth.
Oh, it was poisoned.
Well, it was. But what really happened is
There's
they
always
discovered
a story of cruelty.
Yes, I know. They actually discovered that it was nothing to do with
When's
that.
the urine coming into this?
There's no urine in this one.
It's always
I'm
urine.
leaving urine out of this. Anyway, it turned out that absinthe was the old proverbial BS as being dangerous. The fact that it was just had a lot of alcohol and it was the problem, and people were drinking
different than just
all the
whiskey.
time. And the fact
hand sanitizer.
yes, the hand sanitizer. And they actually found a lot of the deaths that were related to absinthe. The people had also been on the wine and the beer beforehand. So
hell.
really, absinthe is not really a thing. Emerald, how about emerald here? Nero.
Yeah, I'd like some of them.
Nero used to grind up emeralds. Well, I don't know if he ground them up or how he used them, but he used sunglasses. He made some early prototype sunglasses to watch the gladiatorial matches with these green sunglasses. Because it's basically a beautiful gem.
Isn't there a thing about emeralds that they're a bit... Isn't there like fake emeralds and they're like they're like ultra?
So it's part of the beryl mineral family, and rubies are the same family. It's just tinged.
But
with
no,
colour.
aren't they? Chernobyl-y.
Let's move on.
No, they are. There's like some
radioactive.
That's it.
Chernobyl-y. Let's move on. Talking about nearly to being. Have you heard of Shields green?
Shields is in the cheap, shitty jewelry shop.
Shields. SCHEELE apostrophe. Shields green. So Shields green. So it was a colour, a beautiful, beautiful green that was incredibly popular. In 1775, Carl Wilhelm Scheele, a Swedish scientist,
Hey, don't be racist.
began studying the element. Oh, yeah. Well, it kind of gives it away if I tell you what the element was. It was arsenic, and arsenic produces fabulous green. And it turns out, now you know the story of Napoleon, how he was sent out of France and to a little island in the middle of nowhere where he lived?
No.
Well, Napoleon, when he was
Did I
found guilty,
mention my education by a bunch of dirty hippies that didn't know shit?
So he was put on St. Helena Island, right, which is in the middle of the Atlantic, 2,000 kilometres from west of Africa, 4,000 kilometres east of South America. So he was in the middle of nowhere. It's a beautiful, tiny little island, and he was put in this prison cell, and he only lasted 5 years in this prison cell.
Well, that seems pretty good.
Poor Napoleon, very sad.
Well, let's pity Napoleon.
His body died. He died, and his body's found strangely well preserved. And recent testing, in the 20th century, last century, they found that there was quite a bit of arsenic in his head. And it turns out the interior of his cell was painted with Shields green. And it was a craze for a long time. There was wallpaper made with it, and it was crazy.
I have so much green in my wardrobe, it's not even
But not
funny.
Shields green. And 1871.
That we know of. I buy a lot of vintage.
And you are crazy.
Yeah, well.
In 1871, the British Journal of Medicine noted that green wallpaper could be found in all manner of houses, from the palace down to the navvy's hut. A 6-inch square of such paper was found to contain enough arsenic to poison 2 adults.
Jesus.
So really,
1 6x4 and we knock them out.
Shields green's a real problem. But green...
Not anymore, darling.
Not anymore, because we don't use it anymore.
I can't believe you're not talking about British race car green.
Well, I could. That's a very nice green. But the green has... there was a time when green was actually like... it was forbidden to make green by mixing blue and yellow. It was like against the law. So if you read Cassie's book, she'll explain how
That's weird.
The green is against the law. So yeah, totally. And green is one of those really troublesome colours that we all struggle with because it looks a little... If you look at grass is not very green. It's mostly yellow, which is a bugger. And green can make humans and skin tone look a little sick, and it's very tricky to balance that sort of magenta.
We talked about that with the red.
We did. We talked about magenta, and we talked about the colour correcting. Did we talk about the colour correcting of school formal photos?
The chipmunks.
Where you've got the man.
What do you call him?
The man is a young boy, 15 years old, and he's got pinky blue skin because he's pimply and all that stuff, acne.
Yeah.
The girl has had a spray tan because she's had a lumpa lumpa.
Oompa Loompa, that's your term.
Because she's currently, the in thing is to get the spray tan.
Yeah.
Thanks to Donald Trump, apparently. Now it's been extended. Beyond that, and so when you colour correct you need anyway we talked about this. You need the magenta to get rid of the green. You need the green to get rid of the magenta. So it's impossible.
That's Jamenta.
Anyhow. That's
look at you wrapping it up.
That's
you almost
colour.
ran out of breath just then in your attempt to wrap that shit up.
I'm wrapping it.
Oh, Lord.
What were you going to say?
Guess what I'm doing this weekend?
What am
I doing this
You're
weekend?
painting the kitchen black.
I am.
Why are we painting the kitchen black?
We're painting the whole kitchen. No, Actually, we're not painting the kitchen. We're painting the outside, like
Well,
the outside, like island bench thing.
Yep.
And then the giant bookshelf that goes forever, and the walls. And you know that once you go black, that's because black's really hard to paint over. That's actually what it's about.
well, do you mind if I'm not up there whilst you're doing the painting?
Why? What's your problem? You're not painting.
No, I feel guilty when someone's doing all that work.
I
on
know,
me.
it's so dumb. Listen. So, listeners, we have been in a relationship for 25 million years, and you have never painted in that time.
I
Because
have.
I love painting, and you hate it.
Yep.
So I am the painter, right? Just accept that. You
Okay,
do
painter.
the dishes, you do the laundry, I do the cooking, I do the shopping, I do every single other thing, including the painting. Did you like how I framed that?
Yes, you did. It made me seem like I do nothing around it. Anyway, so you're doing that.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'm going to work on my boat
You
this
work
weekend.
on your boat. I'll paint everything black like my soul. Pirate black is the colour. Arr, me hearty.
Where's your Buccaneers?
Each side of your bucking head. You fucking, there's got to be at least a minimum dad joke quota per show.
All right, let's wrap this
Right,
puppy
wrap
up.
it up. Let's go. I'm
See
going
you
to
next
paint
week.
shit black. Bye.